Morning, 4:03, April 7th, 1872. The horrid beast has used me against my own child. I never wanted to teach ma chère the harpsichord, but the Count gave me very little choice in the matter. He had me groom Heidi and prepare her for a night of hellish torment without any implication to the child. That is what would be awaiting for her. Since last night was a Friday, I wanted to make sure Heidi was safely tucked out of view. But she hasn't been in her room, so I went and questioned the maids. Frida went pale with unknowing concern, but Delphine informed me that she had been instructed to dress my nearly 13-year-old child for a performance. My heart nearly shriveled up. I ran out of the room, nearly yelling, "That fiend!" As swiftly as I could, I made my way to the performance hall. When I entered, ma chère was having her face smashed into the harpsichord repeatedly by her bastard of a father, and in his other hand was a match that he was readying. I nearly shrieked in a low growl of anger. "Unhand her now." The room almost turned back in slight shock to hear me speak in such a way to anyone present. But I would not let them do as they will with my children any more. I would not allow Heidi to suffer any further when there was something I could do. My child looked barely conscious, and the Count began to slowly raise her up over the keys in a sitting position as he maintained eye contact with me. He began to speak in such an authoritative voice.
"This is not your show, Lottie. The little chit is being taught a lesson."
His now lit match was beginning to barely touch the keys of the instrument. "No," I cried out. "No more. Her lesson is learned." He gave me a cold glare. He had every intention of steering me away, and was not entertained by the idea of me standing up for my children.
"Would you rather take her place, then? Seems as though you are lacking in respect and obedience as well."
I almost went cold and stiff. My body's answer was that was the last thing that I wanted. Even my mind tried to argue with me how I didn't want to be hurt. But my heart knew what was right.
"Your enacted nature speaks for itself, my master."
He ripped at Heidi's skirts, exposing legs, and soon the flesh of her thigh as he pulled down her stocking.
"Just walk away. Do not hurry her, like you always do."
"What are you doing?" He pressed the still-lit match against her thigh, and she almost jolted back into consciousness as the flame went out on her skin. He then pushed her exposed skin onto the now hot keys of the harpsichord, and I found myself running down the aisle towards them. "Enough! Take me instead." Heidi fell to the floor, and without any hesitation, the Count grabbed me by the tresses on the back of my skull and slammed my cheek and eye into the same spot.
"Heidi isn't here anymore anyways, so I suppose she can no longer learn in the state she's in. Besides, we promised these men a stunning performance, and that has yet to be delivered. Will this be your chance to make up for your past failures, mein dummes Rastier? You have yet to show your best to these good men in all these years."
He let go of my head, causing me to topple over with the bench as he almost kicked Heidi aside. I tried my best to compose myself, and then got seated after picking up the surface that I just knocked over. As expected, I was far from exceeding expectations. Every time I made a mistake, they would have one of my fingers crushed. Every time I had a finger crushed, I would make more mistakes. The torment continued for hours as usual, and I found myself tattered and torn up before the night was done. When their sick games were done, I was left alone with my child. Heidi still had not stirred one bit the entire time, but I had picked up the frail girl with what little strength I had left. Upon this, Heidi began to moan and awake, her eyes barely opening and taking in my face. I shushed her and said, "You did well, Heidi, ma chère, but I'll take care of everything from here on. I promise you will never have to do that again." My voice began to trail off. "I promise." She almost did not seem to be processing my words, and just like my voice, her eyes trailed off and down to her body. How awful that a child should be exposed to her anatomy in such a way. She was covered in injuries that might never heal. If Heidi were to ever be allowed to love and be a normal girl, she'd be damn lucky any suitor would want her given the state she was in.
4:06:72, 4 o'clock, noon. Last night is what Lottie is calling my first performance. The moment that all my harpsichord, also technically piano, training was leading up to. I was made to wear very nice and fine clothes that were much too lovely to be torn up and left in tatters, as well as my hair was fully put up in a way that it would take a while for it to be torn down, which is not something I was accustomed when I was the entertainment. I was brought into the performance room where all of Lottie's guests anxiously awaited for me. The thought that all I had to do tonight was play a few pieces on the harpsichord seemed much too good to be true. But Lottie had promised that was all I had to do. So, I marched right up to the dastardly thing and sat down on its bench. Lottie made me stand up, turn around, and bow before allowing me to sit down again. Once I had done so, I began playing a piece that I grew rather comfortable with to see if it could ease my nerves, for I wanted to make it through the night without feeling the desire to run. As I played, I had done awfully well. That was until I heard the voices behind me, giving off strange sort of moans. I tried my best to ignore it and decided that no matter what, I would not look back to see what exactly these fiends were doing. It made me, and still does, feel ill to only imagine. I tried so hard to focus on what I was playing, but my fingers began shaking from all the feelings of hard work and training. I tried to make sure they were steady enough that it did not affect my playing, but soon I started hitting notes I wasn't supposed to. Luckily, these small little mistakes weren't very notable, but since I was distracted by the thought that I messed up, and by the daunting and ever eerie moans, I started making very obvious mistakes. My fingers slipped across the keys and I felt my will to keep going die as the notion to give up finally kicked in. I slammed my hands against the harpsichord, making a loud and disturbing noise, disrupting what was happening behind me. I had come to the conclusion that I would turn and bow in mockery to them and leave as soon as my legs felt the shake leave them enough to run. But as I had turned, I found Lottie standing right behind me, looking ever so furious. He grabbed the bun in my hair, as he had found a way of pulling my hair so many times before, and began slamming my head against the harpsichord as he yelled. First he was screaming at me in German, claiming that I was only messing up on purpose, which was absolutely false in the beginning. In both English, German, and French, Lottie began calling me any vulgar insult that he knew and that I had come accustomed to. He then demanded, in English, to begin playing again. But on top of the fact that he hadn't given me a chance to do so, as he kept slamming my head over and over and over and over and over and over again, making a more foul noise than any of the ones I had previously made in the night, but somewhat harmonious as he had a decent rhythm. With how much head damage I was receiving, I doubt I could even continue playing on any instrument, let alone start up on my own. For whatever reason, Lottie came to a halt at a rather odd moment. And, for whatever reason, I cannot recall what exactly happened after that. Perhaps I'm getting good at blocking out the pain in memories. When I came to, Maman was straddling me in her arms, petting away my hair. She looked ever so endearingly into my eyes. Her fingers were shaking worse than mine, as they were colored in shades of black and reds and blues and purples, as though almost every single one of them were broken. I took another look at her and saw an ugly but odd-shaped burn that surrounded her left side of her face, mainly around the eye area. I looked down to my thighs, which were lying proudly in their shame state completely exposed, and saw that I had a matching burn on the interior of my left upper thigh. My mom began to promise me that she would try to keep me from performing ever again, but I hadn't a care for her words. All I could focus on were the sorry remnants of my poor dress as they were on the floor more so than my body. 4:07:72, 8 o'clock night. Lottie gave me money. He said to think of it like payment for my services. What a dastardly way to imply what I am to him. I shan't touch a cent of it. I threw it to my wardrobe with my dollies. Apparently, all his guests are calling me the failed prodigy now, as I was supposed to be the prodigy's prodigy. I didn't live up to expectations, and I couldn't compare to Maman.